Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Akinwolere. At 41, Cristiano Ronaldo is still making headlines. This time, he's falling out with club Al-Nassr. So why is he unhappy? And what does the future hold for the 5-time Ballon d'Or winner? All right, with me in the studio, we've got James Horncastle.
Hello.
And we've also got Ollie K as well. Right, James. Ronaldo has been left out of the matchday squad for Al-Nassr in the last 2 matches following a disagreement over how the club is being managed currently. The reports do suggest that he could return to the fold this week. All right, reel us back on this one. What's going on here? And can you just clarify what's happening with Ronaldo?
Well, I mean, the January transfer window has just closed. That's why David Ornstein isn't with us. He has been allowed to go on holiday. But Ronaldo was apparently not very impressed with what Al-Nassr did or didn't do in the January transfer window, which was sign players like they did last year when they spent, I think, nearly 80 million on John Duran from Aston Villa. And, I think while many people would look at this and say, hang on a minute, Cristiano, whether you win the Saudi Pro League or the AFC Champions League, it's not going to move the needle in terms of how your legacy is considered on the football pitch. He still clearly cares about his team being competitive in those competitions, winning something more than the Arab Champions Cup, which is the only trophy he's won in the 4 years that he has been out in Saudi. And over the weekend, there were a couple of things that happened to me which made me sort of rethink this and be sympathetic towards the highest paid football player.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into the numbers later, but I don't know how sympathetic we can be.
I watched Marty Supreme with Timothy Chalamet, and I was reminded that Chalamet's character in there, Marty Mauser, he has this kind of Ronaldo-like determination to be the absolute best at whatever he's doing, whether it be ping pong or football. And then the other thing is like Lindsey Vonn. A lot of people going into the Winter Olympics were like, why is Lindsey Vonn at 41, having torn her ACL a week ago, why is she bothering to turn up for this competition? And as she put in her Instagram post before that ill-fated run that she went on, she was like, people think it's about commercial reasons, all this kind of thing. It's not. It's just because I absolutely love ski racing. And I think, say what you like about Ronaldo, I mean, he is still a competitor who clearly loves football, regardless of what competition or league or country he's playing in. And he wants to win this great competition known as the Saudi Pro League.
Okay, fair enough. We'll talk more about that in a second. So, Ollie, we need to reiterate that Al-Nassr, alongside Al-Ittihad and also Al-Ahly and also Al-Hilal, are majority owned by Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, which many people might know as PIF, which has a 75% stake in each club. We've reported that Ronaldo's frustrations aren't just about Benzema, who has now signed for Al-Hilal. He believes the club is not being supported operationally and financially as well. Ronaldo's protestations are also about defending the club's interests and wanting equal treatment. Ollie, does he have a point?
Well, it would be funny, wouldn't it, if this was being framed as a discussion about multi-club ownership and the ethics of having 4 clubs in one league under one ownership, which also happens to be the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. Which is mad, isn't it? It really is mad to have those. Purely in football terms, it's mad to have the 4 biggest clubs in the country effectively being state-owned. And I know there is the intention is that they'll end up being sold on for great profit and go into private ownership. But it's a mad situation, and it shows that in any multi-club arrangement, somebody's going to come off worse. You can't just have the 4 parties or however many parties it might be in a typical multi-club network being treated equally. Or if they are, I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo appears to be looking at this saying that they are treated poorly compared to Al-Hilal, who are top of the league by a point. But Al-Nassr have the most highly paid player in the world. His contract is eating up a huge amount of their budget. They've also got João Felix, Kingsley Coman, Marcelo Brozovic, Sadio Mane. It's not like it's it's there is an awful lot of money being spent. I don't know whether Cristiano Ronaldo would advocate them spending more money, but if this was in Europe, there would be questions about sort of financial fair play compliance and that kind of thing. But it's not really about all of that kind of thing, is it? It's not about the ethics of multi-club ownership. It's certainly not about the ethics of playing in Saudi Arabia or being owned by the state of Saudi Arabia. Effectively, it's about the issue of whether he feels that they're competitive within the league, but it's also about the fact that Ronaldo, since he's been at Al-Nassr, has had two sort of associates of his, good friends of his, who have been involved in the running of the club, and one of them chief executive. And I think they feel that he feels that their influence hasn't been what it might have been over the last transfer window, say.
Yeah, James, if this is strictly just about the football and staying competitive, I mean, PIF have got, 4 clubs in the Saudi Pro League? Also think about Newcastle in the Premier League. You also think about a wider fund that is there to reshape the narrative around Saudi Arabia, whether it be sport, infrastructure, the lot. I mean, there's a lot of money to be spent here, not just on football.
Yeah, I mean, these infrastructure projects that PIF has been involved in as part of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince's Vision 2030, to kind of diversify the Saudi economy away from oil dependence, are massive. I mean, there's been a lot of attention placed on them, building this city in the desert, Neom, and how much capital that has led to being deployed, and whether they're having to scale that back, change it, whatever, because ultimately Saudi Arabia, like any country, is particularly with that dependence on oil that I've mentioned. Whether the oil price is up or down, it does have an impact on what they're able to spend on and what they're able to not spend on. I would imagine that having embarked on this, I don't want to call it a startup Saudi Pro League, because there was already a strong tradition of football and a following there prior to Cristiano Ronaldo moving to Al-Nassr 4 years ago. But if you call it a restart, if you like, then the investment that they made in those first 2-3 transfer windows, you could see that they would think, okay, we've got this thing going now. And there has been a change of strategy, which has been articulated by the CEO of the Saudi Pro League, which is to, yes, where they can, retain star players, big name established players, superstars who've already been and done great things in the game, but also to sign young, up-and-coming players in an effort to make football sustainable there. I don't know if it ever will in the short term, sure. But certainly, I mean, some of the signings that Al-Nassr have made. I mean, last year, John Duran at the age that he is at, should not necessarily be playing Saudi Pro League, always been since Turkish Super League and now Russian Premier League. But there's been a conscious effort to bring in the best up-and-coming young Brazilian players who have not gone to the likes of Chelsea. Real Madrid or Chelsea. And there's been lavish money spent on those players as well. So, I think, it is not the public investment fund for football. Right. It's got a much wider remit. And as I think Newcastle United fans have seen within PSR or the squad cost rule, they have to be circumspect in how they spend their money. And so, let's see how this thing resolves itself. But I think, as Ollie has said, I mean, I think they've tried to do everything possible to make Ronaldo feel happy, not only personally, but professionally, by hiring the guy who was his roommate at Sporting's academy as the chief executive. And, one of the most prominent Portuguese agents as a sporting director. I mean, it feels like that club has been tailor-made in some respects for Ronaldo. And the problem he always finds himself in, I think, since he left Real Madrid, is that you've mentioned the salary. The expense of just having Cristiano Ronaldo on your team means that team, be it Juventus, be it Manchester United in his second spell, be it Al-Nassr now, relatively limited in how they can build the team around him. And yeah, I'm sure that can be frustrating for Cristiano, but maybe if he took a salary cut, all he would have to do is reduce his salary to 100 million a year instead of 175 million.
We're reporting 175 million a year, Ollie. That's just over £480,000 a week. Sounds much like your paycheck, actually. But that's around 3.37 million a week. I mean, the return the team have got, though, is he's scored 111 goals in 127 matches. As the club captain as well. I mean, the thing is, something James has just said has got me thinking. The money's one thing. Bringing all his friends along with him is another. Is this just a problem that they've given him a bit too much power, a bit too much money, therefore he feels impulsed to basically say what he wants to say?
I think when Cristiano, a player the size of Cristiano Ronaldo, which in terms of profile, I mean, he's bigger than Messi. He's bigger than any other player, really, in terms of global profile. I think you bring somebody like that to a league where it feels like, and it has felt like from the start, like the whole league was being built around him, and that everything else, he was going to be this trailblazer, and all these great players were going to follow in his path, which a lot of great players have. There have been a lot of, really, you think of the likes of Benzema, Ballon d'Or winner, and Sadio Mane, one of the great players of the last sort of 10 years or so. There are great players in Saudi Arabia, and whether they would be there without him, I don't know. Probably not. So he has brought a real value to the Saudi League and to Saudi Arabia. No doubt about that. You look at all the sort of videos he does, and the sort of social media posts he does, and the way that sort of endears Saudi Arabia to his enormous global fan club is obvious. He's a very influential guy, but whether it works as a football project, I would say not. They were top of the league when he signed sort of halfway through the 2022-23 season. They didn't win the league that season. They haven't won the league in the season since. And one thing that really surprised me when I was looking at this last week, there was this sort of show of solidarity with Cristiano Ronaldo, with people holding up sort of number 7s in the crowd, and I thought, gosh, there are a lot of empty seats in a fairly small sort of championship-sized stadium, 25,000 capacity stadium, and I looked at the stadium, and it was the official attendance was 24,500. It didn't look like 24,500 stadium. But when I look back at the previous couple of weeks, there were 10,000 empty seats for the stadium's been barely half full for the previous 2 games when Ronaldo's been playing. So there isn't this, you might see people buying, people in parks in London or all over the UK and all over America and wherever else, certainly in Portugal, wearing Al-Nassr shirts, like you do Inter Miami shirts. But there hasn't been this absolute explosion of interest in Al-Nassr in Saudi Arabia. They're playing in front of small crowds. I know they have priced a lot of people out of going to these games by setting the tickets some of the ticket prices so high. But that really surprises me that there has been that attendances haven't really picked up more than they have.
Yeah. in your piece, James, and I wonder if this links to what Ollie's just said. You spoke about Ronaldo fatigue, and and I think we're in a stage now where he's known probably more for what he does off the pitch than what he's doing on it. Not to say he's not still scoring goals. We've seen it for Portugal, and we've obviously seen it for his team in the Saudi Pro League. But is there something to that?
I mean, I had a moment of self-doubt when I wrote that because, it's not that I'm tired of talking about Ronaldo, but we seem to have the same conversation about Ronaldo, the football player. How much his desire to carry on playing is to reach 1,000 goals. And often, it seems like self is put before side, when it comes to wherever he's been. Like you mentioned, he scored more than 100 goals. I remember that being something that was celebrated at Juventus. It's like, well, yeah, but what has he really done for Juventus? He was signed to win the Champions League. They've gone out in a round earlier every year that he's been at the club. And I think it's become less and less about the football. I think he was signed by Saudi Arabia and he's been paid. Those reported figures of 175 million a year. I mean, that's more than double. That's 2.5 what he was being paid, by Juventus. And so, I don't think they necessarily need to pay him that. But why are they paying him it? It's not just for those goals that aren't winning leagues or Asian Champions Leagues. It's because he's part of an economic plan within Saudi Arabia to make it a media, sport, and entertainment hub. It seems more people are interested in Riyadh season and the boxing matches that they put on in Saudi, which do sell out, or the Royal Rumble, than they are in going to these football games, as Ollie said.
You can understand, though, those are one-off events.
Exactly.
Football is week in, week out,
Yeah. And so, he is, and I suppose this is the other thing with him. He has a proximity to power that no one else in that league has. He calls Mohammed bin Salman boss, will go as part of a Saudi delegation, I think the first one in 7 years, to the White House as a guest of Saudi Arabia, and obviously a guest of the US President Donald Trump. So, that's in terms of the Ronaldo fatigue. For me, he's crossed that threshold now where he's famous for being famous. He's not famous for being a football player in the way that he was, in the way that he built his legend doing that. He seems to delight in this. He seems to be, I'm the first footballer billionaire. That seems to matter to him. And it seems to matter to him that he feels that if he was on a beach in Brazil with David Beckham, more people on the beach would recognize him than they would David Beckham. That seems to be the metrics by which he now measures himself. And so, I think that's why, when I wrote that piece, I posed the question, what's the last memorable Ronaldo goal you can remember? And for me, maybe it's because I was actively covering Juventus. There are a couple goals he scored for Juventus, but I think ones that have really transcended whatever league you report on, whatever club you're looking at day to day. It's years since he scored a goal that really captured the imagination.
Yeah. I do wonder if there's a conversation, like James has just pointed out, as to whether or not all the money spent on Ronaldo actually makes certain teams that he goes to better or worse, or actually achieve what they need to over time, Ollie. But, at 41 years old, I've got to say, he's still scoring goals. But for the layman who's not a Ronaldo fan through and through, you probably know more about Ronaldo now, sitting on the same tables as Infantino, Donald Trump, and big celebrities, more than the goals in many respects, if you're not watching the Saudi Pro League week in, week out.
Which people generally aren't. But I don't know. I would slightly disagree with the idea that he's sort of less well known, more well known for any of those things. I think you probably have to be sort of very much in the kind of football and football celebrity bubble to know much about him being in summits with Mohammed bin Salman and Donald Trump and that kind of thing. I certainly agree with James that in terms of his absolute relevance to the mainstream conversation and mainstream events in football, the peak years were it's probably a decade ago. I mean, he won the last of his Ballon d'Or in 2017. I think he was Champions League leading scorer for the last time in 2017-18. So that's 8 years ago, and the Juventus wasn't an enormous success. It worked in a short-term way. Manchester United wasn't a success. Al-Nassr hasn't been a success on the pitch. But what he's continued to do over this sort of period of extended, slow decline, but decline from an incredible height, is continue scoring goals at an enormous rate, which he's done in the Saudi Pro League. Not helped a team win the league or the Asian Champions League, but he has scored an enormous number of goals. He's done the same with Portugal, who obviously won the Nations League last summer. But when it's come to the big tournaments, the World Cup and the Euros, I mean, I'm sure we're going to have the same conversation in North America this summer that we've had in the last Euros in Germany, and before that at the World Cup in Qatar, where it looked like he was sort of a bit of a dead weight in a very talented Portugal team. Where I think this summer will be different is that he'll no doubt score loads and loads of goals again in the group stage. He'll probably win the Golden Boot at the World Cup, but then we'll get to the stage later in the competition where he's playing against top class opposition and is struggling. So it's he has, to put it this way, I think he's the best 41-year-old footballer I've ever seen. He was probably the best 40-year-old footballer I've ever seen. He's an absolute phenomenon to be playing even in the Saudi Pro League and even sort of scoring loads of goals in European qualifiers against the minnows of UEFA. It's phenomenal what he's done.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a very transparent conversation to have about where Ronaldo is right now, James, in terms of, yes, perhaps people might not remember his greatest goal of recent, but with someone that social profile, I mean, it's a win-win, isn't it? You give him lots of money, he basically raises the profile of your tournament or raises the profile of your league. I mean, it's purely about money at this point, surely.
Well, no, I mean, he has definitely raised the profile of that league. He's made us talk about it as something more than an aside. Whilst we were at the Qatar World Cup, shall we go over the border and watch an Al Hilal game? As a kind of bucket list for your kind of football hipster kind of thing. He has made it something to be talked about. I think one of the things that Ollie has just said, I think is really interesting in that, for a player that age to be scoring this number of goals, it is remarkable as kind of just a feat of kind of human endurance and determination. I think actually one of the things that counts against Cristiano, and I saw one of his former teammates, Gianluigi Buffon, the Juventus goalkeeper, talking about this on a podcast the other day, where he had like this kind of firebrand Antonio Cassano, who had loads of talent but never really kind of fulfilled his potential. Cassano's like hot takes was very much like, come on, Ronaldo. Yeah, he's not on the same level as Messi. Full disclosure, Cassano named one of his kids after Messi. He's called Lionel Cassano. And Buffon was like, Buffon said, no, you're not really understanding Cristiano here, because for Cristiano to have the career that he's had, that's all he said, in this post-last Ballon d'Or era, 2017, he's had to understand his body better, adapt his game, and pare back a lot of the spectacular stuff that he used to do. He can't beat players with the step overs and push it past opponents anymore. He's not scoring from 40 yards anymore. And so he has become incredibly efficient and ruthless. Often it's about his movement in the penalty area. It's about his athleticism with his leap in the box. It's about, people talk about him as being Penaldo or tapping Ronaldo, sort of denigrate him. But like all of these things that there's a tacit admission there that, okay, he can't do what he did before, but he can still be ruthless and decisive on a scale that few players, if any player, has kind of reached. But I do think that maybe contributes to this opinion that Ronaldo is not all that, because there's such a distance from when he was this spectacular player 10 years ago, that because of the player he is now, he was never that player that we thought he was, when he's just kind of adapted to be a guy in a 41-year-old, 42-year-old body that is what he loves to claim biologically 28, something like that. But he's still scoring more than 100 goals for Juventus, more than 100 goals for Al-Nassr. So it is interesting, the perception of him as a footballer.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what could be possible next steps for Ronaldo. His contract will only have 12 months remaining once the summer window opens. His £43 million clause can also be triggered this summer as well. So could he be on the move to the MLS perhaps? Well, let's hear from our North American writer, Felipe Cardenas.
I really think it's highly unlikely that an MLS team would really go all in on Cristiano Ronaldo at 41 years of age in the summer of 2026. Now, it's not to say that there aren't teams that would consider it. I just think in speaking with, sporting directors around the league, I was told by one that there's probably only one team in the league that could potentially sign Ronaldo, and that's Inter Miami. Now, Inter Miami is the home of Lionel Messi, and I don't think either player would want to share a dressing room, even if that would be the biggest story in the history of club football, straight out of FIFA Ultimate Team. But, it would be very difficult for Inter Miami to even consider that. They had to jump through a lot of hoops to sign Lionel Messi, make unprecedented types of deals with even outside corporations and partners with MLS to get him into the league. I don't think they can do that twice. I don't think any team can do that twice. And then there's the other aspect of a lot of MLS teams and their chief sporting directors really wanting to move away from signing the player that is in the twilight of their career. Now, Ronaldo is a massive name, one of the greatest players to play this game, but I just think his form has dipped way too much for a team to take a risk on a player like that. And again, the wage demands are just way too high for any team in MLS.
Yeah, thanks for that, Felipe. And I wonder if there's something in here about the prodigal son returns back home, Sporting. Back to Portugal, James. We talk about brand Ronaldo. I mean, that would be a wonderful story, wouldn't it?
I think it would be a very romantic story to see a player go back to where it all started and maybe have success with them. Sporting I know Porto are top of the league at the moment with Fadioli, but Sporting have certainly continued to be competitive even after Ruben Amorim left. In fact, shown they can be competitive without a signing like this. It's just staggering to me when you said that a player of this age has that buyout clause, which is remarkable, because it's not only a case of paying that fee. It then comes down to paying Ronaldo, unless he's prepared to forego those wages, which one of the stories I worked on over the last year before Juventus played Real Madrid in the Champions League race in October was, how he was in arbitration with Juventus about unpaid money, which was from COVID, and a salary reduction that was or was not agreed to. 20 million. And so he seems to expect to be very well paid. I don't think that would change. And obviously, with Sporting, at what stage would he go to Sporting? When he's 50, 60? Yeah. Is he going to be like the Japanese player who's still playing?
I think he's well into his 50s, isn't he? He's just signed another contract. Yeah.
I agree with James. And it's remarkable, really, to think of a 41-year-old player with not just that buyout clause, but with he's basically got another year and a half on his contract, hasn't he? I assumed when he went to Saudi Arabia that he would see out his days there. I didn't think it was going to be a stepping stone to another move, whether it was in MLS or Portugal or wherever.
Or Newcastle as part of this multi-club.
Yeah. But it's
the rumours are.
But it's I've thought listening to him over the last couple of years, and the same really with Messi, where they've always said, "Oh, this is going to be my last World Cup. This is going to be my last Euros." In Ronaldo's case, so he was saying in Euros in 2024, he didn't expect to be at the 2028 Euros. So, that to me suggested that he might sort of finish with international football after this World Cup. Do I imagine him sort of having another big move in him and another sort of 2-year contract? I suspect he can't play out much longer, can he? I mean, he physically could, because he's.
I guess it depends what his motivation is. Is it money? Is it goals? Is it status?
I think he wants to score 1,000 goals. That's been suggested to me. He wants to score 1,000 goals. He wants to, break whatever records he can. But I don't see him playing at the start of the, let's say, 2027-28 season. I'd be surprised. And if he is, wow, that's really incredible. But if he's doing that, and if he's in dispute with his club over this or that, whether it's about commercial things and financial things as it was at Juventus, or whether it's about not being picked as it was at Manchester United towards the end, or accusing the club of not having his ambitions towards the end, or whether it's this. I mean, I think if he gets to 42, 43 and he's still under contract, and he's still picking fights with the ownership at whichever club he's at, might be easier for them to go against him at that point.
I wanted to ask you whether the lack of football so far might impact him playing in the World Cup. I don't really think that's an issue. I wonder if the motivator also is, when Messi plays, maybe I play too. I mean, are we still on that kind of Ronaldo-Messi conversation?
I don't know. I think they've been very respectful of each other, haven't they? Since they've moved on from Real Madrid and Barcelona, they've spoken about how, they've driven each other on in the same way that those great tennis players, Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal, and Murray.
Yes, let's not forget.
But I don't think their respective ambitions are tied to one another anymore. I think his role. It will be very interesting to see how this role evolves with Saudi Arabia, whether this relationship comes under any tension because of how he's acting at the moment, or whether we're just viewing that over the course of the last 10 days rather than the whole. But he is clearly a very important part of that project, conferring legitimacy on that World Cup, and will no doubt play the same role that David Beckham played for Qatar and continues to play for Qatar, in being part of their advertising, and some of the other legends that were kind of leaned on by Qatar to make Qatar relevant as a football nation outside of their investments in Paris Saint-Germain. So, I mean, I'd be curious to, after his contract runs out, were he to retire, I'd be curious to see where he went in his life after that, whether he moves back to Portugal, moves back to Madrid, to live there, I think he has discussed this, with his great friend Piers Morgan, in terms of I think he wants to focus on some of his many business interests, and he's got a lot of them. I mean, he has a vast business empire, Cristiano, be it hotels, be it hair transplant clinics, be it media conglomerates in Portugal. Maybe he'll edit one of the newspapers that one of those media conglomerates owns. You never know. He might save print media.
Can you imagine?
He's been keeping us all in a job for a long time. So maybe the newspaper man, Cristiano Ronaldo, is the way forward. We'll see.
I mean, Ollie, other than winning the World Cup, I mean, the vast achievements of Ronaldo are beyond most footballers. He's added, a second Nations League victory to his trophy cabinet, also a Euros to his trophy cabinet. I mean, let's think about this World Cup. Is he going to be the star man for Portugal under Roberto Martinez?
As I said earlier, I think we'll see him play matches in the group stage and see him score a lot of goals, because that's what he's set up to do. I think he's there's almost nobody better at scoring loads of goals against limited opposition, and they will be playing limited opposition in the World Cup. That's one of the one of the things about the 48 team tournament, that there are going to be loads of goals scored by strikers in the group stage who probably will struggle in the later stages. I suspect, having seen how it's gone at the last two tournaments, where for Portugal, as in the World Cup and the Euros, I wasn't including the Nations League, perhaps harshly, but they looked a better team when he wasn't playing, and he seemed to struggle with those tournaments. And look, he is capable of proving people wrong and rising to occasion and sort of converting the type of chances that he hasn't converted in some of those big games at the last couple of tournaments. But I would have said that I would have certainly said after the last Euros that looking ahead to this World Cup, that Portugal needed to find a way to play without him, which they didn't do at the World Cup. Obviously, they have had the tragedy of losing Diogo Jota, which is it's not just Liverpool who have had to deal with the footballing fallout of that. It's Portugal as well. There's Gonçalo Ramos, who's an excellent player, but doesn't necessarily play as regularly as you might think a player of that talent would. So we could all see a situation where Ronaldo is not only starting the tournament, but that he's probably scored 6 or 7 goals by the time it gets to the knockout stage, and then that will probably be where he's judged later in the tournament.
Okay, let's see if it all unfolds at the World Cup, gents. Let's leave it there. James, appreciate your time, and Ollie, thanks for joining us as well, and also thank you guys for watching and listening as well. We'll catch you soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.